Nothing like that. In addition, since there aren't that many combat engines in the game, the support category is effectively non-existent.
I'm about to have a heart attack. This bro just said the support category doesn't exist in WuWa. Huh? It is time for the Vars 2 video on the problem with Wuthering Waves team building. The main purpose of this is to get a bit of a react. We want to share our thoughts about the situation. So let's see what our boy Vars 2 has been cooking. I'm seeing people say he rarely misses, so the fingers are crossed. Just so you guys know, I went ahead, I previewed this video on his homepage, and I did see a lot of Genshin impact. And when people generally say that Wuthering Waves has a combat system that's a lot better than Genshin Impact in almost every single way, I'm curious as to how he's using those Genshin Impact clips to drive some points here. So let's see, ladies and gentlemen, let's play the video.
By Kuro that Wuthering Waves. It's been confirmed by Kuro that Wuthering Waves will conclude its version 1 cycle after 1.4, much earlier than I think most of us were expecting, meaning the next update will be version 2, likely featuring a brand new expansion and a mountain of extra content, I'm sure.
Yep, it was officially announced in that trailer that Wuthering Waves 2.0 will be the next version. Dong in the clip, right? He literally confirms that 2.0 is the next version. We don't have to say, oh, it might be. It is.
Gacha games that go down this type of development cycle, version 1, version 2, version 3, and so on, tend to have a predictable formula when it comes to gameplay, with the supplementary versions, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, etc., usually only coming in the form of extra content like events and characters, perhaps a map expansion here and there, while the actual versions consist of, among the aforementioned things, potential changes to the game's overall engine and experience, or a noticeable shift in character design, capability, and subsequently meta.
Okay, so what we're doing here is basically just getting into a breakdown of what goes into version updates. What significantly changes in the game going from 1.0 to 2.0, what kind of new features are typically added. He's talking about things like meta shifts, new mechanics, blah, blah, blah. We see it a lot. And so there's definitely inherently, right, a lot promised with Rinasita, or I believe that's the implication he's going to make. Let's keep going.
I'm led to assume WuWa plans to go in that direction too, otherwise they wouldn't make
I see a problem here. Brotherman is using Camellia and Danjin, two Havoc damage characters, against the Impermanence Heron, which is Havoc resistant. So, maybe that's the problem. I'm gonna be honest, I've never seen this before. So, maybe he was just like trying everything else just to prove a point. Let's see what he's got.
Direction too, otherwise they wouldn't make such a big deal out of each version and instead just make it a build number like most other mobile gachas, having big expansions come in at random times throughout the year. If I'm right and they do plan to make a big splash in version 2 with new gameplay updates, I wanted to make a video discussing some issues I take with the game's current character and team building landscape in the hopes that version 2 will address them next year.
Okay, so what we're seeing right now is that this video he had a lot teed up. He talked about the version updates, he talked about all of the new features, how there's a lot of potential for upgrades to the game when you have version updates. And so this is kind of like feedback video. Here are some problems with the situation. Here are some cool ideas to have maybe moving forward. And then from there, let's see if we can think of some ways to actually integrate these into the life cycle, the 2.0 to 2.6, 2.7, 2.8, however many patches there are. So that's the context of the video. And yeah, let's keep going.
The focal point of this game is of course the combat. Credit where credit is due, WuWa's mechanics and game flow are among the best I've seen, especially in the gacha department.
Dude, listen to this fucking Glazer. Whoa, 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 whoa. He plays Genshin and he plays Honkai Star Rail. And he just said WuWa has some of the best combat in gacha gaming. Wow. Guys, I think we found another Kuro bot. I think he literally fits the definition. He said WuWa is good. How dare he?
From attack strings to swap canceling animations, tandem attacking.
How dare he mention features that are not in Genshin Impact or Honkai Star Rail? How dare he do that? Ridiculous. You're not allowed to do that.
Dodging, parrying, mid-air swaps, air dashing, all facets of movement, both in overworld exploration and combat, feel intuitive and smooth, which is a huge aspect of a hack-and-slash beat-em-up action game like WuWa. On the other end of things, the types of content we have are also fairly well made, with the—
Did you just say they're well made? How can he justify saying that the game is good? How dare he do that? You're a shill, man. I can't believe you did that.
A variety of engines taxing our ability to understand patterns, react accordingly, and dodge or parry critical enemy attacks to achieve a more efficient clear and stay alive. I am thoroughly impressed by how fluid everything is. I don't think a single player would argue the game's combat feels bad to play. If every open world action RPG gacha was made with the same framework as WuWa, I would not complain in the slightest. They say it's catered more towards hardcore players, but I think even casuals can get the hang of it after moderate practice. Individually speaking, I also love how open-ended the characters are. Despite everyone having—
Why did he say that the characters are open-ended and then put these three on there? What is open-ended? Well. I think that this is quite literally what he meant by that. I don't even need to say anything. My chat is doing it. I bet that these three characters are flexible. Alright, moving on.
Having a basic skill in Ultimate, their forte circuits are where Kodo can get really creative, as it can theoretically take the form of anything and allow units to stand out from one another, leading—
Okay, we'll start taking this react a little bit more seriously. He brings up a great point here. The Forte Circuit is literally an independent ability that is always linked to some part of a character's kit. And the end result is that it functions pretty much differently for every single type of character. However, we also have to factor in what Fob said about how the characters in this game work. Because you have to press the same buttons, they all play the same. The same applies to games like Dota 2 and League of Legends. That's the Fob take, and we have to make sure that we recognize his take.
To very unique playstyles between DPS units, from Changli to Jian to Jinhsi to Yinlin to Changli to Camellia to Encore, so on and so forth. Well,
does that mean that Fob is wrong? No, Fob is always right. What are you guys talking about?
There may be a basic template all units go by, at the same time their combat is distinguished fairly well. No two units play the same. Moreover, the presence of—
No two units play the same? That's just false. Come on.
An intro and outro skill, along with animation cancels by swapping, leads to a deceptively high skill ceiling, rewarding players who further delve into the various interactions between units. And additionally, when you account for universal defensive systems like parrying and dodging, it also makes it so you can technically run no party at all, choosing instead to solo bosses or tower floors with just a single unit, assuming you have the DPS to actually do so. Structurally speaking, I find Wuthering Waves' combat and character design to be considerate towards the player's own skill level and playstyle preference rather than imposing a set number of win conditions or methods of attack. But with the game having been out for half a year at this point, a few things came to my attention that, while not exactly a major problem now, could become one in the future if not addressed. The fortunate thing is that all these problems have easy solutions. In fact, they've already started working on them.
Why is he doing that? This is just glazing. You're not allowed to talk about the good stuff that they're doing. Fob and Genizod and Mr. Pokey, they said that we're not allowed to talk about the good things that the devs are doing or we're disgusting glazers. I've learned after that conversation. They're completely right.
In this current version, the hallmark experience of a gacha game is to complete the Pokédex in a manner of speaking, to obtain and make use of as many characters within the game as possible, and to continuously go after the new ones that come out. If you were to look at a regular hack and slash game and compare them to a gacha hack and slash game, what's the main difference?
Why are you comparing? Guys, he compared again! No, you're not supposed to compare! Stop it! Stop comparing! You can't do that! You're not allowed to do that! Oh, you shill! He put the games side by side! He needs to stop it right now!
The main difference is that gacha hack and slashes have a ton of characters to choose from.
Just so you guys know.
Hack and slashes have a ton of characters.
That's not an S0 Camellia. Just so you guys know, this is not an S0 Camellia. He truly does have a 10-cent agent, it appears.
Characters to choose from, and expectedly,
I think after seeing that, guys, yeah, we're all coming together. We're all coming together after that.
A ton of party compositions you can work with, whereas in say Devil May Cry, you're expected to mostly stay on Dante and then Nero in the newer installments, with maybe the opportunity to play a couple more characters. The focus is more on the mechanics of you, the player, along with equipment selection and whatnot. WuWa attempts to bridge the gap together by doing a mixture of both, giving characters unique playstyles and attributes while still leaving the door open for player agency and expression. Unlike in other gachas where there's only so much you can do with a bad character, in WuWa, the weakest unit in the game can solo the hardest content if you're good enough.
No, you can't. No, you can't.
Thing is, it's kind of hard to give both aspects the proper attention, and where you'll find this mostly on display is in the realm of team building. For gachas, the focus is building. Like if you go into any other game, team building is
what the fuck is this game? What is this?
everything. You can't just take a ragtag group of mismatched units and YOLO your way through. Granted, some games are more lenient about it than others, and there will always be units whose selling point is that you can pair them with—
Guys, I am not even joking. Bro is actually comparing way more than I ever could. Bro just put 4 or 5 games on the fucking screen in the span of 30 seconds.
virtually anyone, and they'll perform on a meta-relevant level. But there still is a big focus on teams, therefore a big focus on obtaining many characters. Personal mechanics and decision making do matter of course, but the idea is to have the right team to handle whatever content you're about to face. In contrast, WuWa's team building feels more like an afterthought, taking a backseat in favor of basically skill issue. As such, the game's roster is being constructed in a way that focuses more on the individual and less on the team, reducing the amount of options or niches available for future units.
Reducing the number of options or niches for future units. Alright, so we're done with the first 4 minutes of this video. I'm gonna tone down on the sarcasm a little bit. I think right now the issue that he's talking about is because the game has so much of an emphasis on the personal level of play that you're actually running with your teams. That means that the actual team's compositions, the team synergies, aren't actually that important in the long run. And that there are some limitations on the roster. There is a limited amount of potential for certain characters. Based off of that, more emphasis on skill and less emphasis on how the characters are actually working together. So that's kind of the basis of his argument. Let's start looking into some of the points now.
Traditional team building conventions go as follows. You have your main attacker, and then what I like to informally call the backup dancer, as in
Did you just call it the backup dancer? This is quite literally Kara canceling and negative edging. Can we just use the term sub DPS? Let's continue with the video.
They can deal meaningful DPS of their own, but their main purpose is to set up the main attacker. Then finally support, and by support I'm mostly referring to healers. The synergistic aspect of
Okay, so we got main DPS, backup dancer, and support.
The team building is primarily housed in one's outro skill. For example, Camelia's best partner is Sanhua because Sanhua gives a metric ton of basic attack deep and on her outro skill. You can make a case to include the 20% attack on her S6, but by and large, Sanhua's entire existence is to just give an outro skill to Camellia. Some teams elect to instead run 2 main attackers fighting alongside each other through liberal usage of quick swapping like Changli and Yinlin, but broadly speaking, it's main attacker, backup dancer, and healer. Where's the issue with this? The issue is that compared to other gachas where
he recognized dual DPS. Nice.
You have characters working in concert with one another.
Though, if I'm frankly being honest, the Changli Yinlin team that's one of the shittiest fucking teams in the game. Any of their teammates are straight up just better. It is one of the actual worst teams in the game.
To achieve a collective goal greater than the sum of their individual parts, the impression I get from WuWa is that it's just mostly individual units being put together, purely for the sake of it being convenient to do so.
Using the mindset of it's individual characters put on a team and then them just having some synergy. Because obviously, right? Let's just go to Honkai Star. Let's just go to the Honkai Star Rail, right? This fucking guy. I see why he used the term backup dancer. Let's be honest here, ladies and gentlemen. Vars is the ultimate fence sitter at this moment in time. Brother man is farming both sides like it's his fucking job. And frankly, it's a little bit impressive. So one thing that I really wanted to emphasize really fast is this one point that he made here before we get back into all of the other points that he was making. There is a really interesting argument that he made himself that I believe contradicts what I just heard.
To include the 20% attack on her S6, but by and large, Sanhua's entire existence is to just give an outro skill to Camellia.
So, Sanhua's entire existence is to give an outro skill to Camellia. That is essentially the same exact thing as saying that Sanhua cannot function without another character. Correct? That's what he's saying here. That Sanhua is reliant on another character to function. That's a fair take. That's a fair breakdown, right? Maybe we can add a couple more words to it.
The synergistic aspect of team building is primarily housed in one's outro skill. For example, Camelia's best partner is Sanhua because Sanhua gives a metric ton of basic attack.
Because she gives a metric ton of buffs.
Attack deep and on her outro skill. You can make a case to include the 20% attack on her S6, but by and large, Sanhua's entire existence is to just give an outro skill to Camellia.
So, the reason why I'm covering that point is because he quite literally says right here. Listen to what he says right here.
You have characters working in concert with one another to achieve a collective goal greater.
He uses Honkai Star Rail as an example of good team building because there are characters that rely on each other's kits to function. He uses Honkai Star Rail as an example here.
And healer. Where's the issue with this?
He's saying that there's an issue, then uses Honkai Star Rail as an example where there isn't an issue.
Issue is that compared to other gachas,
you
have characters working in concert with one another.
You have characters who work with each other
to achieve a collective goal. Greater than the sum of their individual
parts. By him saying this statement essentially implies that in WuWa, you're not doing that. But then he used Sanhua as an example, a character that sucks balls by herself and requires another teammate, you know, the sum of the parts, to get the full potential out of her.
Parts. The impression I get from WuWa is that it's just mostly individual units.
It's mostly individual units. Even though we just used the example of Sanhua, whose only existence is to buff other characters.
Units being put together purely for the sake of it being convenient to do so, not necessarily having actual synergistic place.
Let me just add another notch on the tree. Characters don't have synergistic playstyles.
Anytime there is one, it's only to fuel their main attacker, implying that really the only way to go about WuWa's team building is vertical investment, leaving very little, if any, incentive to go for horizontal investment.
You happen to get a lot more efficiency out of investing in your Hypercarry character instead of your sub DPS characters, because Hypercarry characters have a higher portion of the team's total damage. But the fact of the matter is that I don't know any game where this also isn't the exact same case. Like, this is like saying, oh guys, when you play the Jing Yuan team in Honkai Star Rail, or when you play the Arlecchino team in Genshin Impact, the most important thing is that Arlecchino is built. In every single gacha game, the Hypercarry character is always the most efficient to actually build. In every single game.
Vertical investment denotes pulling all resources and attention into one character, getting them as strong as humanly possible, and using that one character to steamroll the entire game.
Yep.
It's the equivalent of going through an entire Pokemon playthrough with exclusively your starter Pokemon, catching nothing else. Horizontal investment emphasizes making a bunch of characters and working on them enough to be usable, allowing for multiple teams, multiple combinations, and instead choosing to look at the central mechanics of the game more than the individual units.
Okay, so horizontal investment, pulling for and building a large quantity. You have more team comps, more combinations to use. Interesting. I have a counterpoint for this, but let's see how it plays out.
Vertical investment essentially has it so you make a single unit so powerful, even if they're in a disadvantageous matchup or situation, they can clear the game.
Let's play this again.
Essentially has it so you make a single unit so...
Guys, this is how much damage your Zhongli Yao liberation is going to do when you're on lingering tunes, by the way. Because guess what? This buff takes time to ramp up. When Zhongli Yao enters the field, he immediately just uses his liberation. He's using Abyss Surge though. Maybe that's why he's making this video.
So powerful, even if they're in a disadvantageous matchup or a situation, they can clear the game's content through sheer force. Whereas horizontal investment's all about character selection and planning. A well-designed gacha game ideally gives players the freedom to choose either or, and more crucially, rewards players for choosing either or. At the moment, there really is no incentive to horizontally invest in WuWa beyond getting the necessary teams to 30-30 clear tower.
There is no incentive to horizontally clear other than getting the necessary teams to 30 out of 30 the tower. And this is my conclusion. This is a self-inflicted issue. This is us manufacturing a problem ourselves because we didn't understand the mechanics of the game.
Or diversity. Reason being, there's no central mechanics or combat engines. The game wasn't designed...
What?
There's no central mechanics or combat engines.
Okay, let's hear the rest of it.
The game wasn't designed around things like type matchups or battle mechanics or elemental combinations.
Huh? Are we just saying shit? Are we just making up critiques for fun?
It was mostly designed for individual characters. To be fair, it's not like similar gacha titles did.
What are we saying here? The first 7 minutes of this video are like absurdly contradictory and just say things aren't in here that are. Bro was actually making really good points over here. That's why I was saying, oh, he's a bit of a Giga Glazer.
For individual characters.
And we put Changli for individual characters? Let's kind of reset the context for what's going on. I have basically compiled a lot of the criticism from Vars, used some of the examples and the points that he's making. And the end result is that this video, up until this point, has really not been making a lot of sense. There seems to be a lot of different points that are being brought up that are just objectively wrong. This is one of the most damning parts of the video for me. And frankly, it's a little bit annoying. Do it right here.
engines.
There's no central mechanics or combat engines. And so my point to that is, does he know what concerto energy is? Does he know that mechanic? Because that is quite literally the central combat mechanic or combat engine in Wuthering Waves. It is concerto energy, and it works really well. Second is the next point we have over here.
It wasn't designed around things like type matchups.
The game isn't designed around type matchups. We have outro skills that buff only one attribute and then buff a secondary damage type. This means that there is a focus on pairing types together to make certain team comps stronger. So again, this is just bullshit, but we're saying it's in there. It's bullshit, but we're saying it's in there. Next up,
Or battle mechanics. Or
there's no battle mechanics. Again, what the fuck is vibration strength and a stagger bar? What this means is that if you don't use the stagger bar, you don't use vibration strength reduction, you don't knock the fallacy out of the sky when it activates the jets and goes sicko mode, you will have an awful time. And this begs the question for me, the follow-up. Has he actually fought the fallacy in the tower a single time? So that's my follow-up point. Because one fight against the fallacy would kind of force you to recognize the value of the stagger bar and its reduction. And so we are again implying that there was something wrong with Kuro's design decisions, that they didn't think about these things, that that they didn't keep these top of mind when designing the game, and basically making them look like developers that kind of don't know how to do their job. When in reality, you simply don't know about any of these things, and then you're making claims like this. And we're sponsored by Kuro to make videos for the game while doing this to the devs, making them look incapable? How much worse does this get? I'm wondering. I'm a little concerned. Let's see.
It was mostly designed for individual characters. To be fair, it's not like similar gacha titles didn't have this issue early on as well. The first year of any new gacha game is all about just having enough units to play with, and then subsequent years do the actual fleshing out the roster through intentional unit design. WuWa in particular released comparatively less new characters in the first version, not to mention version 1's already ending and it's not even a full year in. Again, not objectively a bad thing in a vacuum, but in the context of a gacha game, it's kind of counterintuitive. On one end, Wuthering Waves inadvertently is one of the most free-to-play friendly gachas of its kind in that you're not pressured to pull for a ton of characters. You just need 3 attackers, 3 backups, and 3 healers, and you're good to go. It's not like in Genshin where you gotta think about all these elemental reactions, or Starl where you have to think about all the various combat engines and gimmicks, or Blue Archive where you have to think about blue units, red units, yellow units, I hear they have purple units now, frontline, backline, all that stuff. In WuWa, you could just pick a character, give them gear, get them a partner with a natural skill or buff that helps them out, and then just get good at dodging and parrying.
Why are we just reducing WuWa's gameplay like this? Wait, why do we do some complex framing for every other game and then just gloss over and skim over how WuWa's team comps and rotations and teams work?
And parrying, and you win. It's great if you're the type of player with a preference for that kind of gameplay, but fundamentally, it conflicts with what a gacha game is about. A bunch of different characters to account for a bunch of different scenarios.
You wanna know what the craziest part about this is? He mentioned quick swap and dual DPS in the video, and then it appears he has not played a single quick swap or dual DPS team a single time in the game. Because guess what? Dual DPS teams don't actually have outro skills. And so when the best teams in the game that literally clear the fastest are dual DPS teams where 2 of the characters don't have an outro skill, this is how we're reducing the gameplay.
Give them gear, get them a partner with a natural skill.
But you don't need to do that. If you just have a dual DPS team, you can play Changli, Yao, and Encore together, and it works. It's good, it's strong. You can do that. He doesn't even list the possibility of it when they are quite literally the best performing teams in the game. They clear the tower, they clear bosses the fastest, the dual DPS teams. This is actually just a tourist video. I hate using the term because it is insulting and degrading towards a CC. It basically tells them that they aren't putting enough effort into actually learning the game before trying to make content about it. But that is literally what is happening in this video. Unless the entire thing is a bait and switch and he's just oh, just kidding guys, disregard everything I said for the past 13 minutes. Unless he does that. This guy is a fucking tourist.
Or buff that helps them out, and then just get good at dodging and parrying, and you win. It's great if you're the type of player with a preference for that kind of gameplay, but fundamentally, it conflicts with what a gacha game is about. A bunch of different characters to account for a bunch of different scenarios. The biggest area where the lack of party building and strategy hurts the most would be in character selection. In all honesty, the 6 elements mean virtually nothing at the moment. virtually nothing at the moment. There may be bosses who resist a certain elemental type, but that's the most rudimentary system you have for typing.
Okay, so we're just gonna say it's like it's rudimentary and bad? Even though we just said there's no typing at all in the game, and now we're gonna say there is typing. So being simple and not requiring a fucking PhD in elemental ICDs to fucking understand the rotations in Genshin. It's just bad that we don't have that in this fucking game. I think ICDs are the dumbest shit in Genshin Impact. They're actually fucking awful. They just add this odd complexity to the game that like nobody really fucking cares about, but everybody has to work around.
Along with, I suppose, the Echo Set bonus, there's no reward for going a Mono Glacial or Mono Fusion or Mono...
Why does there need to be one? Why are we saying this is bad? But guess what, guys? Because Vars doesn't play the fucking game, I guess I'll bring up the examples for you. You have your healer Baija over here, right? She's been in the game since 1.0, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, we do have Mono Glacial support, but we just say it's not there either.
Mono Havoc team. No reward for combinations of elements like Electro, Spectro, or Fusion Arrow. Nothing like that. In addition, since there aren't that many combat engines in the game,
Guys, this is where it is. This is the definition we all need to know. Hanlon's fucking razor. A philosophical principle that suggests the people's actions are more likely to be explained by incompetence or carelessness than bad intentions. And saying that Mono Glacial has no support isn't a perfect example of this.
Or Mono Fusion or Mono Havoc team. No reward for combinations of elements like Electro, Spectro, or Fusion Arrow. Nothing like that. In addition, since there aren't that many combat engines in the game, the support categories...
Again, he is making the point that there are no combat engines in the game. We're just gonna pretend that Concerto Energy does not exist.
Since there aren't that many combat engines in the game,
we're just gonna say that, and we're gonna use that to create points and create critiques that don't fucking exist. That is the meta of this video.
The support category is effectively non-existent.
I'm about to have a heart attack. This bro just said the support category doesn't exist in WuWa, and he lists 2 general buffers that just amplify all of the damage on the team and says they don't exist. We can universally agree that these 2 characters amplify damage, right? Huh? What is wrong with you? It's right fucking here. How are we sponsored by a company and then we just put shit that's just this fucking wrong? I don't know what happened. This is literally the worst video I've ever fucking seen. Everything in here is just wrong. I don't even know what to say anymore.
Prior to Shorekeeper, it became a meme that Verena was guaranteed to be in every single party for no reason besides being the best healer. Pragmatic.
Do we just make shit for fun? We're this lazy in the pursuit of the bag?
Practically speaking, there's not a single reason for you to choose Baija if Verena is available. Past healers, characters who specialize in a certain gimmick, namely supportive ones, have been knocked down in relevance for being either too disruptive to the carrier's actual attacks or simply not dealing enough damage. Take Jinhsi for example. She's an excellent character who can do a ton of things, from shielding to healing to AoE damage to crowd control.
Why are we talking about character kits? Please don't fucking talk anymore about character kits. Please don't. Please just shut up. Just shut up.
Whatnot, but she's seen as objectively inferior to most units in light of having effectively no forte circuit and giving less buffs and defensive utility than other healers. Against in a similar position where she can crowd control, can battery, and provide some buffs on the side, but because she's not a dedicated buffer and healer while also not being a DPS unit, she has trouble finding a good spot in the meta. That's one downside to having universal defensive mechanics like parrying and dodging.
Did he just use whatever he just did to make a point that parrying and dodging is bad?
She has trouble finding a good spot in the meta. That's one downside to having universal defensive mechanics like parrying and dodging.
What the fuck does that even mean, Kobe Bryant? How are those 2 even related? Are you just saying shit? I don't even know how to respond to that take. Why are we saying parrying and dodging is bad because Yang Yang has no buff? What? This is actually like a chat GPT script that we just read out for fun. We don't play the fucking game, so we can't actually validate anything that's in here.
It kinda shuts down any practical reason to make a tank support or any ancillary class.
Why would she be a tank support?
Plus, what I'm mostly concerned about regarding the current state of Wuthering Waves is that even though there's a lot of experiential distinction between characters, there's not enough practical distinction between characters.
If the biggest content creators for Wuthering Waves on launch were creators like Fob or Vars who genuinely thought this about the kits of Jinhsi and Changli, it is clear why there was not a lot of good content for this fucking game when it released. Because if this is how the CCs are thinking about the fucking game, these established CCs, their reputation actually needs to be burned to the fucking ground. You cannot be taken seriously anymore. You don't deserve to be taken seriously anymore. What is this shit? We're just saying these two characters are the same thing because they have a big hit at the end? Because with their fully charged up Forte circuit, they do a big hit, so that's their playstyle?
Characters, there's not enough practical distinction between characters. By extension, not enough rules or aspects to incentivize team building and planning, leading to the possibility that every unit gets compared to every unit.
So we're just gonna blame the fucking devs.
Oh, you didn't add enough practical distinction, and so all of the units seem homogenous and have the exact same playstyle, and then all we do is just compare the units in terms of the damage they do.
Jinhsi and Jian, hey, they both deal damage, so they just play exactly the same in all the game modes.
Character comes out even if they have a unique aspect to them because there's no infrastructure in place for that
We're already shit-talking 2.0?
unique aspect to make a difference. They'll end up being leveled against the rest of the cast.
Let's just manufacture problems, guys. Let's manufacture problems and a solution based off the idea that Changli and Jinhsi play the same, or like are the same character with no practical distinctions. And let's make further arguments and points based off of that horrifyingly bad conclusion. A sponsored creator is saying this shit.
My theory for why Koto is not producing that many characters compared to other gachas is unlike in other games where they have to in order
Now we're shit talking the devs!
to give all formats enough units for a place to start working on. WuWa doesn't really have that, and be conservative with releasing characters. Less so would Powercreep the game really fast.
Bro saw the Jian rotation from 1.0 and decided he was trash. And hey, let's just say he's power crept. Even though Jian, when you use his 8 Qinglong rotation, has damage comparable to Camellia and Jinhsi, and you actually get good at the character and optimize his combos, he does comparable damage to Jinhsi and Changli. But hey, let's just say that these devs don't know how to balance the fucking game and are power creeping every fucking patch. That's basically what he said. He's like, these devs have no idea how to design characters and they're fucking up. That's why every release is a power creep.
Working on WuWa doesn't really have that, and so they have to be conservative with releasing characters. Less so would Powercreep the game really fast. For example, Camellia just came out, right? Though she's the only 5-star Havoc unit in the game, people aren't comparing her to just Genshin and Havoc Rover. They're also comparing her against Changli, Xiangliyao, Encore, Jian, and
The only 5-star character that Camellia should be compared to in terms of power creep is Encore, because they share the same biz support. That is the only character Camellia should be getting compared to from the power creep angle, because Encore also wants Sanhua. That is the only comparison that should be being made from the power creep angle.
comparing her against Changli, Xiangliyao, Encore
What are we fucking doing? What are we fucking doing here?
to just Genshin and Havoc Rover. They're also comparing her against Changli.
No, you don't do that. You don't compare these two characters and the role they play on the fucking team.
Xiangliyao,
This guy does liberation damage. She does basic.
Encore,
This is Encore's the only one you should be doing the comparisons for.
Jian,
He does heavy attacks.
and Jinhsi.
Are you fucking serious?
The next DPS unit will also be compared against everyone else, regardless of their element.
What game do you not compare the DPS characters just from like an overall damage perspective? In what game do you not do that? Why are we just highlighting this issue as some unfortunate byproduct of incompetent devs when there is quite literally damage comparisons between DPS characters is in like every game ever made? And then we're just highlighting it like it's some profound point because we said Jinhsi and Changli are basically the same fucking character because they have a big resonance skill nuke at the end of their rotation. Maybe that's why we're doing it.
Any backup dancer unit will instantly be compared to every existing backup dancer unit.
Is he just trying to make a point about characters in the same role being compared to? Why are we spending time on this? What point are we trying to fucking make here?
Compared to every existing backup dancer unit. Every supporter healer will instantly be compared to every existing
What is wrong with this? Why are we even mentioning it like it's some negative?
supporter healer. There's very little, if any, categorization between WuWa's characters, which
What the fuck does that just mean? We just categorized the characters into different roles and then we just said there's no categorization?
very little, if any, categorization between WuWa's characters, which can also make units feel generic. Oh,
Did we just put up a photo of Changli Yao for the only DPS with a time slow? He literally slows down time 4 times in his rotation. So we put up Changli Yao for the most generic DPS in the game.
Oh, she's another generic healer.
How does this video just get actively worse and worse with every passing second? The healer whose buffs cannot be activated without chaining together intro skills is generic. The character who literally doesn't function unless you order the shit properly.
It's not a, oh, he's the first glacial support, she's the first arrow driver, what have you. Characters are what makes a gacha game memorable and enjoyable, not just in terms of personality, appearance, and background, but also their place in the meta. In WuWa, it's less about the characters and more about how good you are at dodging, parrying, and understanding timings. Nothing wrong with that, but it takes away focus from the character.
I feel like I don't even need to give commentary about this. Did we just show a picture of Zhao spamming plunge for 5 seconds and then just try to make that seem good?
Over in Genshin, for instance, people loved Changli despite having fallen off considerably in the meta as a result of the history he had in the meta of making life easy for you. He was
Let's keep going.
defined by that. I know it's only been 6 months, but I have a hard time finding a clear definition for characters in WuWa.
Because you have spent about 5 minutes of your time over those 6 months actually looking at the character kits. That is why. You are saying the most brain-dead, brain-rotted takes I have ever heard in my fucking life. And I am just baffled. Like, I am literally praying to God that this fucking video is just a massive fucking bait. But the thing is, nobody in my chat is like saying that it's a bait. So like, you actually genuinely fucking believe this. I cannot believe that you're saying after fighting the fucking fallacy that the stagger bar has no impact at all.
Elements don't matter. Attack style doesn't really matter.
Look, we're just holding on to our fucking intro skill with the fallacy about to go sicko mode. We're just chilling. He sits here on a full concerto bar for 10 seconds, and this is the gameplay that he wants to put in.
Matter. It's just, can you parry and dodge and do your...
You don't know how to play the fucking game! And you're making like these critiques on the team building!
Rotation properly. At the end of the day, I feel like Wuthering Waves' combat has a ton of depth to it, but not enough width, if that makes sense.
Because you don't know how to play. That is the problem. You have no idea how to actually play this game.
It's good for players who care only about the mechanics of the game, but the majority of gacha players play gacha
You don't even understand them, so why are you talking about them like this?
games to collect a bunch of units and plan out a bunch of parties. As stated before, fortunately there are easy fixes to this. For starters, Kuro is already experimenting with party mechanics, one of which being the Dream Link, which came alongside the new event in version 1.4, allowing all 3 units to attack in concert for big DPS and explosions and whatnot. While currently this is only available in the event, they could expand more on this in the future, perhaps give actual significance to the elements that are doing it.
You don't understand what attributes are in the first place.
No, I'm not saying they should become a Genshin clone and make elemental reactions. What I am saying is that they need to add more universal mechanics to encourage the use of different characters and add more layers to team building than just outro skill deepens. That way, maybe there might be a scenario where you want to use Yohu over Shorekeeper or Genshin over Verena.
1 second, guys. I'm gonna count how many hypercubes he shoots off before swapping to Yinlin. Zhongli just used his liberation.
Is that they need to
okay,
add more
he's got 3
universal mechanics
hypercubes.
to encourage the use of
1
different
hypercube
characters
out.
and add
Boom,
more
1
layers to team
hypercube.
building.
He had 4 seconds with Yinlin's outro buff open before he swapped off the character. He had 4 seconds of Yinlin's outro buff and then swapped off the fucking character and lost it. And he swaps back to Yinlin to do what? Nothing's up. There's no concerto. There's no forte. There's nothing. And the boss is ready for a fucking beatdown with the other 2 hypercubes. Content creators, if this is how you play the game, yes, the Tower of Adversity will appear impossible. When you play like this and you don't understand how to play the game, why are we making educational content about how to play the fucking game when we ourselves don't know how to fucking do it? Why are we doing that?
Than just outro skill deepens. That way, maybe there might be a scenario where you want to use Yohu over Shorekeeper or Genshin over Verena. Furthermore, they can work to build on their various combat engines a bit more. Jinhsi, for example, wants to pair with characters who specialize in coordinated attacks like Zhezi, or Changli and Yinlin.
What the fuck was that?
For example, wants to pair with characters who specialize in coordinated attacks like Zhezi.
What the hell even is that?
Changli and Yinlin pair nicely together due to each of them swap cancelling for the other very nicely. If they create more engines, that gives players the
What are these fucking he used the word combat engine like 10 times in the fucking video. He never defines it. It's almost like this combat engine term is just a vehicle to deliver bullshit to Kuro games. You just keep fucking spamming it when there's no meaning behind it.
create more engines that gives players the incentive to pull for and build characters.
Gives more engines that gives players incentive to pull for and build. What? That means nothing.
To work best in that engine. Right now, there's no difference between Hypercarry and swap cancel teams. It's merely personal preference, but if they make
He's trolling. He's gonna tell us in the last minute of the video he's just f***ing around, right? Did he actually just say that Hypercarry and swap cancel teams are exactly the same?
It's merely personal preference, but then there would be a compelling reason to go for those teams.
So currently, right now, ladies and gentlemen, there is absolutely no compelling reason to ever play a single dual DPS team in this game because, let's disregard this fact, the dual DPS teams have the highest actual damage in the game.
Overall, at the risk of pissing off a bunch of players with this take, WuWa's combat gives off a Sword Art Online sort of vibe, where every character is one class. The combat needs more systems and gameplay elements in place to make it as rich as possible. The mechanics and foundation are there,
Changli has a time slow in his kit that enables dual DPS teams because one of the hardest parts about dual DPS teams is the fact that those quick swaps are sometimes hard to actually dodge with. And that means that you can get a lot of things interrupted when playing those teams. But Zhang Liao's time slow enables dual DPS because it provides a lot more breathing room for compositions like that.
just needs to expand the menu a bit. I guess you can say Wuthering Waves has the exact opposite problem as Genshin. The immense
What problem?
breadth of Genshin's gameplay from characters to elemental react.
Immense breadth. I hold E on Zhang Li and I swap to another character. And this is your immense breadth of gameplay?
Actions to combinations and stuff is held back by the lack of substance in its combat in that this
This is literally just a Genshin Impact advertisement. I really don't even know what to fucking say at this point.
is nothing to put them to the test. The sheer depth of WuWa's gameplay from parrying to dodging to movement to swap canceling and stuff is held back by the lack of practical
This is just wrong. Why are we putting this in the video?
character distinction and systems to complement it. Genshin is very wide but shallow, WuWa's very deep but narrow. Long story short, my hope for version 2 is that they expand more on team building and things that make every character feel unique.
My hope for version 2 is that you actually read a fucking character kit before making a video.
I like the game's combat a lot. I just think they zeroed in too much on making it an individual focused game and not a team focused one, which is what Gacha
He did it again. He threw one hypercube, then swapped off Zhang Liao. How do you watch a player who plays like this? How can you watch their guide? Do you trust this guy to give you advice on the fucking game? Why should anybody view educative content about WuWa from this player? Why would you upload this? You just upload yourself playing this game like shit. Why do we put so much trust into the opinions of people who literally have no fucking clue what they're doing?
That's what gachas are all about, teams. I can't recall a single gacha out there that doesn't have a robust
Probably because if this is the level of analysis you put into WuWa, imagine the level of analysis you put into every other fucking game. That's probably why you don't recall anything.
team building metagame. What do you guys think about this? Do you agree with my stance or
Oh,
do you disagree? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. That's it for today, so if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at VarsFM, join my Discord server, and check out my other Wuthering Waves discussions if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
I don't.